The next type of loop we're going to look at is something called a for loop. And to speed things up, I've written the code already. So we're just going to look at the for loop and watch it in action. And we'll take it from there. The for loop looks complex at first. And I remember when I was learning this way back, I found it kind of complex. But what it does in a way is it sort of combines everything that we see in the while loop up here. I've commented it out so that it doesn't run our page. But you notice, like with the while loop, I had the count variable. I initialized it out here, and then I set the condition here. And the condition, this is what the condition basically is, what the PHP script is looking for, whether it be a while loop or a for loop or an if statement, and so on. So what the for loop does, it gives you a much more compact way of looping, if you will. So I've initialized the variable here, and this is the condition. Basically, I'm telling it, if while the count is equal to or less than 10, do this, and this is increase the count. And I can also tell it to do stuff here as well. So it's a more compact way, and it pretty much does the same thing. One point I want to make is that this update, this is basically instructions to the loop, to PHP, what you do after a loop is completed. I want to point out this is done first, and then the PHP goes back and does this. So this will get printed to the page before it increments the count variable to the next level. This is the increment operator that we looked at in the while loop section of this, of course. So let's save that, and we're going to take a look at it in action. And here we go, for loop 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So again, whether you're using the for loop or the while loop is really a question of taste. And most of the time, some people prefer while loops, other people prefer the for loops. I'll leave it up to you to play with both. And over time, you'll probably choose one or the other for most of your work. One tip, though, is in a particular PHP project, if you choose one looping technique, you probably want to stick to it just to be consistent. But anyway, that's just some nerd detail down the road. Hi, we're back. In this video tutorial, we're going to look over the last type of loop that we're going to cover in this video. And before we do that, though, I wanted to point out something about the for loop that I failed to mention in the previous section. And that is, if you notice, after each segment here, I end it with a semicolon. This is very important that you do that, semicolon, except for, of course, the last element here. You don't need a semicolon because it's the last element. So keep that in mind. So you initialize it, semicolon. This is the what you need to do, what's the condition. Basically, this is what the loop is operating off of. And this is what it does after it processes this. That said, now we're going to move over to what I feel is the coolest looping technique in PHP, and that is the for each loop. The for each loop was basically put together to make it really easy to loop through arrays. And thus, I've created an array up here for us to loop. So let's do it now, and we're going to see how easy it is. Since the array we're going to loop through is the shopping cart, excuse me, I'm just going to cut and paste that in. So I've created a new variable that the for each loop will use. And what we'll simply do is we'll just echo out the value of that particular item. So there you have it. Very simple loop. So basically, first thing we have to give it is the array. And then we have to give it a variable that will be used to represent each item in the array. So the for each loop basically looks into the array for us, grabs an item in the array, and then does whatever we want with that item. It sticks it into this variable rather, and then we can do whatever we want with that. And then it keeps looping through the array until the array has been looped through entirely. So let's save this, and we'll take a look at what it looks like on the page. Item fish, item dogs, item birds, Of course, this corresponds to our array here. What else can I point out about the for each loop? It's rather a simple one to use, so there's not much to say about it. It's a very important looping technique because when you're pulling records from a MySQL database, for instance, it actually comes back as an array. If you're parsing information from a form post, as we've learned in the previous video, it's actually a type of array. So the for each is actually can be used quite a bit, and it makes grabbing information out of an array quite easy. Now you could use a for loop to grab values from the array, but it would just take more work to build it. So I would just use for each. So that pretty much covers our basic look at looping in PHP. There's a few more details here and there, and there's another type of loop that you could use, but this I think is enough. We've learned about the while loop, the for loop, and the for each loop. And I hope you see the value in these things. You're going to be using them quite a bit in your PHP coding. I can guarantee you that. And I would suggest that what you do is create a bunch of loops and give it a go. There's nothing like actually getting your hands dirty in code to learn this stuff.